Hello, everyone. It is May 2nd, 2018, and I hope everybody is having a great night wherever you are. I don't know if this program is going to go as long as last week's. We had a lot to talk about last week with the new revelations in the disappearances of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. And then, of course, we also had to cover the search for the original Night Stalker and him being caught, if we're to believe that that guy is actually the original Night Stalker. So we had a lot to talk about last week, and we have some things to talk about this week. But I don't know if the program is going to go quite as long, but we're going to go as in depth as we usually do. Stephanie, Kelly, Lois, Pamela, hello, Lois, Lois Lane. Good to see you. I just need to take care of something right now to make sure that a guest for this Friday's program is able to watch tonight. I want to make sure that she doesn't miss it. Sherelle, Charlie, Joey, thanks for joining in tonight. As I was saying, that got a good program for you tonight. Don't know if it's going to run as long as last week's. Just not sure. Had a lot to cover last week. Hello, Suzanne, with the clapping. Holly. Okay, so all right. So we're all good here. Holly, thanks for asking, Holly. I'm doing good. I didn't play. Maybe some of you know that I played disc golf, and I played in a tournament this past weekend up here in Clearwater. Holly, if you would have asked me that question on Saturday night or Sunday afternoon, I would have said, I'm not doing so hot, Holly, because I didn't play very well. But I've recovered. You know, it is what it is. I just think mentally I just have to get better at the game, not physically, but mentally. But thank you for asking, Holly. I deeply appreciate it. Shelly, happy Wednesday to you. Over the hump day. Dorothy, good evening. Amy, good to see you. And there's Janet. Oh, there she is. Glad you can make it, Janet. Sorry we didn't get things properly arranged for next week, but everyone should know, last week. But everyone should know that I just said hi to Janet. If you see her name in the comment section tonight, she is one of my guests for this Friday. Actually, this is going to be the first program that Unfound has done where we have two guests instead of one. We're going to have Nancy Bowen, who is Jamie Bowen's mother. That's the case this week, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen from Columbus, Ohio. But we're also having on a woman who has worked very hard on the case. Did not ever meet Jamie, but got involved afterwards. Her name is Janet, and you will see her name in the comment section. And she has a lot to say. She's experienced some things in doing her own investigation, her own work on the case. And I thought it important that she be on the program as well to tell you her firsthand account. So we kind of balance it all out. I've edited I should say I listened to the audio. I didn't have to do much editing on it at all, but I listened to the interview today, and it goes really well, very organized, so I don't think the listeners at all will get confused as to who is speaking, even though Janet and Nancy are on at the same time. So that's going to be something new this Friday. We're going to have two guests on instead of one. I just thought that really had to do it this time. I've had opportunities to do that in the past, but kind of declined. I didn't know what somebody else was going to be able to add to the conversation. But this week, I finally said, I think we need to do that this week. So that's why that's happening. But like I said, played a little disc golf this weekend. Did not play very well. And in fact, I'm going to have to really think about when I play in a tournament again. And it wasn't physical. It was mental. If you didn't see, Volume 3 is out. I don't have one yet. The print editions are on their way. Came out really good. The cases covered in that book are Jeff Nichols, Rebecca Gary, James Walker, Teresa Butler, Charlotte Paulus, and Lola Catherine Fry. And also included in it is the foreword is by Carl Koppelman, of course, the guy who draws missing people or dead or unidentified remains. He was in an interview on Unfound last year, even though over a year ago. And then his interview, the transcript of it, is at the end of the book. And then, of course, I always include a chapter of what I've learned since I started doing Unfound, and that's in there as well. It's a light blue cover, so continuing the different color themes. The first one was red and white. Second one right here, black and green. The third one is kind of light blue and black. So I hope that you will check it out in both print edition and ebook form. Something else that all of you might be interested to know is that I don't know if we've ever talked about this on an episode. I think I might have mentioned it maybe a couple weeks ago during an episode. But I have contacted the University of South Florida, which is based here in Tampa. They actually have a criminology department, criminology degree. And I contacted the head of the department yesterday and see if he'd be interested in having me come in as a missing persons expert to talk to whoever the students, probably maybe junior level, senior level students about missing persons cases. What I've learned, maybe go over a couple cases, giving them examples of what went wrong in an investigation, why these particular cases are still unsolved. So I'm hoping that the head of the department gets back to me. I would like the opportunity to go and do that, being that I've interviewed over 80 guests now for Unfound. I think that my experience, and this is not to pat I'm not saying, not trying to be arrogant or anything like that. You know that's not who I am. But I've learned a lot. And I think that I have a unique point of view on this, learning all of this stuff the way I have, and the people who I've talked to, the way I do the program. And I would like to pass that knowledge on to others. So I'm hoping that the powers that be at USF will allow me to go over there and maybe speak to some classes, maybe a couple times a semester, or maybe this summer, something like that. I could put together a presentation, maybe 45 minutes, with or longer, with a slideshow or whatever, the PowerPoint presentation with my laptop. I think that I'd really like to. I would really enjoy that. I don't get any fear speaking in front of people. I'm very comfortable doing that. I think that's obvious. With the program and talking to all of you off the top of my head. So I contacted them yesterday, and we'll see how it goes. Shelly, Dorothy, Shannon, good to see you. Lori, I know that this week's case is Friday's case, being that you're from Ohio. It's going to mean a lot to you, Lori, so I'm sure you're going to be listening to it, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen, and we will talk about her disappearance later in the program. We're going to get back to the old format. We kind of ditched the format last week because we had a lot of unique things going on. This week, we're going to go back to the regular format. So just to get some things out of the way, books 1 and 2, if you don't have them, you can get them. You can contact me personally. We can work out something through PayPal or something like that, where I'll sign one of these books and send them to you. Would love to do that for you. Everybody who has gotten my books personally signed by me has gotten them quite promptly with a special message. Every message I try to make unique, and I'd love to do that for you. And we could arrange something. You can contact me personally if you'd like to have one of the first 3 volumes. Please let me know. Holly says, I think that would be great and you would be good at it. Holly, thank you. I'm sure you mean the USF speaking. Yes, I think I would enjoy that. To tell you the truth, back When I lived in Las Vegas, I had the opportunity to speak at UNLV and the Community College of Southern Nevada, or it was at Charleston Community College, one of them. While I was there for different reasons. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed both times doing that, and I think I would enjoy this. And I surely know the material this with missing persons cases more than I knew what I was talking about back then. Totally different topics. But also Patreon and PayPal. You can contribute there, patreon.com/unfound podcast. And then PayPal, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I've had some very generous contributions recently. I cannot thank those people enough. You know that I thank them on the episodes every Friday. I don't give out their last names for obvious reasons. But I cannot thank those people enough. Andrea said she would like all the books with a personal message. And I think I should, given your contributions and support, Andrea, we need to take care of that. In fact, you need to contact me maybe after this program is done and we can talk about that. Pamela says yes for me, all three. Pamela, all you have to do is contact me. And Jill, welcome tonight. I know you tune in every week, and I appreciate you taking time out of your Wednesday to tune into this live show. Thank you. Also, we got the playing cards. Here they are. I think I'm going to have more time to work on those now that I'm finished with volume 3. Come on, card. Come on. This is awkward. All right. Playing cards. Who do we have here? We have Robin Abrams. We have Donna Mikalenko. There we go. Aaron Gilbert. And Kent Jacobs. So you can check those out at makeplayingcards.com. I'm going to be working a lot harder on these and getting them out a little bit more now. Once again, volume 3 was taking up a lot of my time. Just ran into some things with it and it took longer to complete it than I thought. I think volume 4 actually is going to come out very quickly because all of the I think all of the transcriptions for that one are already done, I think. So all I have to do is design the front cover and write the last chapter, and I think we'll be ready. I think. But I think it'll be here sooner. There'll be less time span between 3 and 4 than there was between 2 and 3. Let's put it that way. And then finally, the T-shirts. Yep, I got an Unfound T-shirt on tonight. You can see it here, my gray one. All the first-year cases on the back. And people have asked me, is there going to be a second-year cases shirt? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And there's going to be a second year of cards, too. So, yes, when I get to 52 again, there'll be another deck of cards that come out as well. So you can go to unfound just go to myshopify.com, do a search for Unfound. You'll find all the shirts. Angela's tuned in, and Bobby, good to see you tonight. Thank you for tuning in. All right, let's get to a question. Stephanie, speaking of books, Stephanie has been very helpful in putting the books together. She's done a lot of the transcriptions that you've read in the 3 books so far, and I'm sure I will be using her services in the future. But she asked me, I think I can answer this question without, being too controversial. She asked me, have there ever been any guests who maybe I thought weren't telling the total truth? Let's just, let me get this right. Any guests you are suspicious of or you don't believe? She followed that up with, like, perhaps they have something to do with the missing persons case or hiding crucial facts info. Let me say it for the record. I don't believe that any guest I've ever interviewed on this program has anything to do with the disappearance that was covered. Okay, let me state that for the record. Okay, I don't believe that. I talked to these people enough that I think that I would know. All right, first of all. These people, a lot of times, are in separate states. And maybe all of you don't realize the kind of process it takes for somebody to get on Unfound, where we go through a lot of information, a lot of questioning, and this time that's spent on the phone. If you think that the interviews are long, like 90 minutes, when I talk to a guest, we're on the phone for at least maybe 3 or 4 hours before we ever do an interview. So I really go through things a lot with them. Let me get some people. Leslie, good to see you, Leslie. Speaking of former guests of Unfound, Leslie, good to or maybe future guest. She hasn't been on yet. Sorry about that, Leslie. Leslie, I'm looking forward to having you on Unfound one of these days. Stephanie, you've enjoyed it. Thank you. Kimber, speaking of former guest, good to see you, Kimber. Sherry, good to see you as well. I would never give out any names. Of course, that would be wrong. Let's just say that I realize there are times, especially when it comes to parents and things like that, that they don't tell the whole story about maybe what their son or daughter was into. Okay, you know that we don't shy away from talking about drug addictions and things like that, but we only talk about those things because they may be relevant to the disappearance. Okay, people who are engaged in risky behaviors are more likely to disappear. I don't think that's any news. Do I think that maybe in some of those cases, some of these parents have held back a little bit? Yes, I do. I do. I'm not going to hold that against them, though. I think that in all of the cases that we've covered, I think the truth got out. I think that enough information got out to have an accurate representation of what happened. And where the tough part about all of this is no matter how many questions and information I go through with the guest, there's only so much of it that I can actually double check, triple check, quadruple check. All right, there are certain things about knowing that person that I'm not going to find anywhere. I'm just not going to do that. It's just not possible. Unless I personally knew the person who disappeared, it's not possible. Of course, I haven't known any of these people. So there is an amount of trust that I have to put in my guests, that thinking that they are telling the truth enough. Okay. Do I think that in some cases, some guests might have had a grudge against somebody and trying to put it on somebody who might not? I think that may be possible. All right. Stephanie asked me this question. I haven't gone back through every case and thought about that. What's important to me is that these cases get covered in the most thorough way possible. All right. The most thorough way possible, given that I'm not going to each one of these locations and I've not been to any of these locations where these people disappeared. And I've only met a few of my guests in person. So, and that would be Linda Smatlack and Lisa Kassoon. I've only met 2 of my guests in person. So, Stephanie, I'm going to guess that some of my guests probably have held some things back. But the most important thing, though, I think, is that I don't believe any of my guests had anything to do with the disappearances that were covered. Okay, I think that's the most important point. I think that in these cases, these people want to tell the truth, even though they know even though I think it's difficult for some of them, given the subject matter. It's not easy for a mother to talk about how her daughter was into drugs. Okay, it's just not. It's not easy, to talk about, a sister talking about her brother being a drug dealer. But those are the things we have to do on the program. And there probably are things that they hold back because I'm just a guy on the phone. But I don't think that has skewed any of the investigations in one way or the other to really put anybody off on the wrong track. Okay, I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that any withholding of information or something is so egregious that it left you, the listeners, with an inaccurate view of what happened. I don't believe that's happened. I just don't. But Stephanie, that's a great question. Having said that, I'm in contact with most of the guests who have been on Unfound. I consider them to be friends, and I'm willing to help any of them, whether I think maybe they held back on me a little bit or not. I'm ready to help any of them in any way they think possible in the future, whether I think that maybe they withheld a couple of things or not. In the end, I don't know. It's just a suspicion I would have. I don't know this. If I knew this, then I'd talk to them about it. I don't know it, so I don't know who I would ever talk to about that. So Sherry, yeah, kind of, maybe it's kind of like being a doctor. You can only know what's wrong if the patient tells you what's wrong. If that's what you mean, Sherry, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Let's get to a little bit of news. Unless I've missed something, and I'm going to guess maybe some of you have kept up on this. I haven't seen any new news in Laura and Ashley's disappearance case and what happened last week with this Busick guy. I think I would have read somewhere if their remains were found or anything like that. I've not been in contact with, I've not tried to contact Lorraine Bible since this all went down last week, and I don't anticipate trying to contact her for a while. I'm just not going to parachute in, to talk to her. She has much bigger things on her mind. I'm just going to kind of go by feel regarding all of this, but I've not been in contact with her at all. So I know more about what went on last week than all of you do at this point. Okay? I just wanted to give you an update on that. Dorothy says, some of the missing have so many shady people in their lives. Others are straight arrows and just gone. That's true. That's true. Maybe, and I need to welcome in Valerie. Thanks for joining tonight. Rachel, good to see you in here as well. Dorothy, you're exactly right that I think on Unfound, we have covered a wide spectrum of different types of people who have disappeared. We go from somebody like Suzanne Lyle, who was going to college, I think, living a pretty straight arrow life. And then on the opposite end, and once again, I don't care about people's lifestyles. I don't care. But then something different might be Ashley Kohler, who was obviously hiding a lot of things from her mother regarding her being a call girl, etc. All right. Then if you want to go with men, you have Jason Jolkowski, who also didn't seem to have an enemy in the world. And then you have somebody who would I bring up? Maybe Billy D. Sylvester. Once again, I don't care about their lifestyles or whatever else. A guy who even his mother admitted when he got drunk, he could be a little mean, hanging out with the wrong types of people. It just runs the total spectrum, and it just goes to show anybody can disappear. Yes, more likely if you're involved in some illegal things, shady things, risky things, it's more likely, but anybody can disappear. Let's move on to this. Jessica Heeringa, if you haven't read, they are now picking out the jury for her trial. This is going to be the trial of Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey Wills, I wrote down Wills. Jeffrey Wills, who, let me check that for a second. Let me see if I got that name right before I think it's Jeffrey Willis. Yeah, Jeffrey Willis. I wrote it down wrong. I thought I wrote it down wrong. Hello, Dee Dee. Hello, Dee Dee. Good to see you. I'm always looking for that Wonder Woman picture. And Anne, welcome to you as well. Sherry, Chris Turner. I think that's a good example too. Chris Turner, living a good life, just happened to have a really bad girlfriend. Yes, Sherry, I think that's a good example too. But Jessica Heeringa, that trial is happening. Jeffrey Willis is going on trial for the murder of her. Of course, the interesting part about all this is that Jessica has not been found. The cousin of Jeffrey Willis says that he helped Jeffrey dispose of Jessica somewhere, but when the police went to that location, nothing was found. So the belief is that Jeffrey moved her, or maybe the cousin is lying. Hello, Lynette. You're going to be seeing Lynette. Of course, she has another name that I'm not going to reveal right at this second, but you're going to hear Lynette on an upcoming episode of Unfound. I'm really looking forward to that interview that we're going to do tomorrow. But the body hasn't been found in Jessica Heeringa's case. I emailed Tad Tobias yesterday, and I said, is he aware of this case? Does he know about it? He was aware of the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa, but I don't think he knew they were going to be going to trial without a body. He said that he emailed me back, and he said no, but he's going to be keeping tabs on it. Of course, anybody who's not familiar with Tad is known as the nobody guy. He's a prosecutor nationally known in the United States as specializing in prosecuting murder cases where there's no body. Jessica's would be an example of that. But that was a huge case when it happened in Michigan. When was that? 5 years ago, something like that. She was working at a convenience store and just disappeared. And the belief is that Jeffrey Willis showed up there in his van. Well, nobody happened to be there. It was a very small time frame in which he could have showed up and kidnapped her and then killed her. He has already been convicted for the murder of another woman, Rebecca Bletsch, B-L-E-T-S-C-H, in 2014. So he is now under suspicion for the disappearance of Jessica Heeringa. I have to admit that before I started doing Unfound, I really followed that case very closely. I did quite a bit of talking back and forth with people on Web Sleuths and elsewhere about her disappearance. And that's one of those situations, maybe like the case we're going to cover this Friday with Jamie Bowen, is that there is such a small time frame in which these women could have disappeared, but it seems that that's what happened. And also, I think regarding Jessica's case, is that this is another case, much like, I guess, Laura and Ashley's disappearance, where nobody in the public, to my knowledge, knew about this insurance card that was found on the road near where the house was burnt down. In Jessica's case, I don't ever remember reading about this laser sight that was found in the woods near the convenience store. Maybe that was public knowledge. If so, I missed it. But it could lead you to believe that, and the police, of course, believe that this laser sight that would go on, I guess, a rifle of some type, that Jeffrey Willis was using that to watch the convenience store that night to make sure that nobody was there, and then he could swoop in and take her away. But the belief is that for some reason he left the laser sight in the woods, which is really weird. I don't know what to make of that, really. I don't know what to make of that at this point. Would you leave something like that in the woods? I guess if an insurance card can be left on the side of the road in Laura and Ashley's case, then I guess a laser sight can be left in the woods for Jessica's case. But that's not something that I heard about. So it was a case that has been out there for a while. I'm sure a lot of you covered it or read about it and have talked to people about it. It seems like it was a nationally known case. A lot of suspicious things regarding, especially the manager of that store. And it turned out the manager of that store, I think, had a brother who had a van very similar to the one that was seen on those video cameras. So a lot of weird things going on in this case. And we'll see if they can convict Jeffrey Willis without a body. I happen to believe, given they're probably going to be successful, I'm guessing that that's the case. But it also shows you, remember what I said last week about Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman's case. I had the suspicion that this Busick guy is probably never going to, of course, he's been interviewed. If you've seen any of the transcripts, the Busick guy has been interviewed about Laura and Ashley's disappearance, and he claims he doesn't know where the bodies are. He claims he doesn't know. Now, the other two guys who are dead had talked about, well, they were thrown down in a pit, and that's the threat that they used to give to anybody any women who said that who they thought might talk about what happened. In Jeffrey Willis's case, I think he's going to get convicted. But once again, I have this very, very bad suspicion that he's going to get convicted and never reveal where her body is. I don't mean to be a downer or to depress people, but I just get that feeling. My perception, I'm not sure if statistically this is true, but my perception is that these guys who do these things and people disappear and they're going to be convicted of murder, they usually let the cops know where the bodies are fairly quickly. And Jeffrey Willis has been in custody for a while and has said nothing. So I think that's a very, very bad sign for the Heeringas and them getting to bring Jessica home. I, of course, hope that's not the case, but I need to tell you all the truth, the way I look at it. Maybe maybe you have a different spin on it. If so, I'd love to hear it. But I just don't see it going much differently than that. I just don't. So, but I still think he's going to be convicted. He's going to be off the streets. He was already convicted for another murder, a woman that he murdered after Jessica disappeared. And so I'm not sure what to make of all of that either. But Jessica Heeringa's case is in the news. They're going through the jury. They're picking out a jury right now. But once again, Jessica has not been found, just as in Laura and Ashley's case. Their bodies have not been found. And speaking of which, while I'm on the topic, how long has it been since they charged those two guys with Tara Grinstead's murder? Her disappearance. Guess what? She hasn't been found yet either. I'd really be interested to hear what all of you have to say about that. Does that call into question anything that, regarding that case? Are these really the two guys who did something? I don't think that trial's taken place yet. So I'd like to hear what you think about that, because once again, Tara Grinstead, I know they went somewhere right after they took those two guys into custody. They were out in some, I don't know, orange grove or something like that, digging. They never found anything. So that case is not solved. It's not solved totally. So I'd like to hear what all of you have to say about that. And Dorothy says, very creepy to be watched. You're talking about Jessica. Yeah, I'm sure that, of course, she didn't know that she was being watched. But yes, to think about that, it's creepy. Dorothy, I totally agree with you. It's totally creepy. So I wanted to talk about Jessica's disappearance. Something else, let me see if I had another question here. Hold on just a second. I think that somebody asked me about a couple cases recently, and I want to get to those here. If you could hold on just a minute. Okay, Tamara, who I think she's in the group watching tonight, she says, I have so many questions and I can't think of any of them. Wait, here's one. What, if anything, was in the trunk of Al Copper's car? And that was a case we covered almost 2 weeks ago. And then similarly, how was J.R. Mulhan's truck processed? Sorry if you've already gone over this. Tamara, if you're in the audience, if not, you can catch this on YouTube later. My recollection, okay, if you remember, I have a lot of cases up here in my head, so it's sometimes difficult for me to remember exact, precise facts in some of these cases, even recent ones, because I have so many, I'm looking at so many cases at one time. And really, when it comes to doing interviews, although I really study them, sometimes I do forget some things. And as far as Al Copper's car, I happen to believe that if Matt knew there was something in the truck, he would have said something. I mean, I think Matt, of any guest that's ever been on Unfound, was very forthcoming about everything. I think that if there was anything in the trunk of the car that was suspicious or unusual, he would have said so. He didn't. I asked him what was in the car. We talked about there was the missing shoes, and then there was Al's phone, which is, of course, still a big question in the case. That's as much as I remember. I think if there was anything suspicious in there or missing, I think Matt would have said it, Tamara, I think. As far as how was J.R. Molahan's truck processed, surely Julie would be able to be very exact with you. But as I remember, I think we covered this in the interview, is that there's Tamara right there. Okay, Tamara, thank you. The way I remember it, Julie said that the only fingerprints, only proof of anybody in that vehicle was Julie, who drove the truck once in a while, who I think drives the truck now, and JR, I think. You get I know we talked about in the interview, I think that if anything suspicious would have been found in the truck as far as any other fingerprints or something like that, I would think I would remember that. So I don't think anything that could point in any other direction was in there. Could somebody have worn gloves? Of course. But then we start getting into a more complex situation. And I should say something, but let me say something about J.R. Molahan's case in a second if you missed a post that I made this past weekend. Sherry says, I'm usually on the defense side, like prove to me that happened. But if you, capitalize, have enough circumstantial evidence and you can prove without a shadow of doubt, you don't need a body always. Okay, Sherry. Tamara says, I'm here. Sherry says, yes, that's correct. Okay, thank you, Sherry. As far as J.R. Molahan, something that should be cleared up regarding the tolls. This is something on somebody who is very familiar with the toll system between Virginia and North Carolina passed this on to me. She said that there are no toll takers on that highway. It's a toll road, but there are no toll takers. And they bill people according to their license plates if they don't have Easy Pass. So I need to kind of that it wasn't that the reason that Julie got that bill in the mail is not because whoever was driving that truck blew the toll and went through the Easy Pass without paying. That is how it usually works in Virginia. There are no toll takers. You can't blow a toll, I guess is what I'm saying. You can't blow the toll. Maybe you can if you're in Florida or something, because no state's going to come after you in Florida if you blow a toll for $5 or something. They're just not going to do that. But for Virginia people, they're much easier to get to. And so the reason she got that bill is that's just how things work. And I didn't realize that when I did the interview, and I'm guessing Julie didn't know that either. It didn't occur to her, just wasn't thinking about that at the time. So just to be clear again, whoever was driving the truck, JR or somebody else, did not blow the toll, and that's why the bill ended up in the mail. The reason the bill made it into the mail is because that's how things work there. Okay? Just to be clear. Whereas I'm used to, like, the toll that I had to go through in West Virginia when I drove to Pennsylvania, there's a toll taker. We have a couple toll roads here that, on the other hand, here in Florida, the Leroy Selman Expressway going over to Tampa is a toll road. And it's the opposite. They read your license plate numbers, and then you get a bill in the mail. I never am on that road, so I've never gotten a bill. On the other hand, there's a toll road that's north of me. They have toll takers. So it's a variety of things here in Florida. So, yeah, Angela says, no, only certain tolls in Virginia. So I guess you got a mixture. I guess you have a mixture as well, Angela. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. That maybe alters the facts. That certainly, I guess it certainly alters the facts in that case, and maybe gives you a different idea of what might have happened. I have to say that it seems, I did the poll regarding his disappearance, and I wouldn't say it was 50-50, but it was pretty close. Between foul play in Norfolk and him doing something, hurting himself down in North Carolina, it was very close. So, and I can understand that. Some of the cases, of course, that Unfound covers, it's fairly obvious if there was foul play or not. JR's, I can see why the answers have been 50-50. Angela says, in Hampton and Norfolk, there is one that does mail you. Well, that must have been the one, Angela. Thank you. That must have been the one. Let's move on to another case, another little news article, and then we'll get to the disappearance for this week, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen. There was an article at kokomoperspective.com, and it's actually a never forget article about some people who have disappeared in the Kokomo area. Well, if you'll remember going back to, was it June of last year, May or June of last year, I covered a missing persons case in Kokomo, Indiana, the disappearance of Esther Barger, and I had her daughter Matilda on the program. And I guess the most distracting, and you should know, all of you know, I've already emailed the writer of this article because that's just the way I am. Well, in the article, the brother of Esther Barger is quoted quite a bit. And his name is Bill Pelfrey. Well, if any of you remember that case from last year, in just interviewing Matilda like I did, we pretty much decided that Esther's brother Bill is probably should be considered the #1 suspect in her disappearance. Well, this reporter used him as a source of information for our article, interviewed this guy extensively. In fact, I posted the link in the group, and I hope that you will all go and check it, and you'll see what I mean. Bill Pelfrey, his last name is Pelfree. Hello, Hannah. Glad you could join us tonight. Thanks. So this reporter interviewed this guy because this guy, Bill Pelfrey, is the guy who arranged this Never Forget ride, and I guess it's in its 3rd year. And I think, if I remember correctly, Matilda and I actually talked about this thing that he had been putting together during the interview last year, and this would be the 3rd year, so it had been after the 2nd year. It would be after the 2nd annual Never Forget ride that I interviewed her. And I think that if you listen to that episode, if you're not familiar with it, please go and do so. You'll see we have a lot of reasons why Bill should be suspected as a person of interest in his sister's disappearance. Well, I read the article, and I was a little ticked off. So I emailed the reporter who did the article, and I said, hi, I'm Ed Densel. I host a missing persons program called Unfound. And here's the link. And I said, last year I did an interview with Esther's daughter regarding the disappearance, and I thought maybe you should know that Bill Pelfrey is considered the #1 person of interest / suspect in Esther's disappearance. And here you are quoting him for your article. So, and here's the link to that interview I did with Matilda, if you'd like to listen to it to see why we came to that conclusion. So the reporter has not gotten back to me yet. I must have sent that sometime this afternoon, maybe about 8 hours ago or something like that. I'm hoping this reporter takes the time to listen to the interview that I did with Esther's daughter to see why Bill Pelfrey should never, ever be quoted in any article regarding his sister's disappearance from now to the end of time. All right? And it ticks me off when, it doesn't help anybody. I realize that, yes, Esther's name's out there. It's nice. But when you go quoting somebody who is a suspect, there's a person of interest, had reasons to cause Esther to disappear, it kind of undermines, I think, what you're trying to do with the reporting. You're trying to find these people, and do you not even check the backgrounds of the people you're talking to? Because it's easy to find. You put Bill Pelfrey's name into Google, you're going to find out what kind of guy he is, and he's not very good. So I was ticked. I think that I used a professional attitude when I emailed her, but the article ticked me off. It really did. I'm just so over reporters doing these disappearance articles and not checking who they're talking to. All right, that's why, you know, the question Stephanie asked me earlier about, you know, guests. You know, I think that I do my fair amount of investigation and questioning and everything else to really determine, does this person have anything to do with the disappearance or not? And that's why I can really say that I don't think any of the people who I talked to had anything to do with the disappearance. Now, there might be a couple who suspect something, but I don't think that any of them had anything to do with the disappearance. Whereas here we have an article about Esther Westenbarger, and they're talking to her brother, who is a known drug addict, has some felonies for assault, other things on his record. And, you know, it's not even mentioned in the article that he actually saw his sister that night. So I just don't like it. Christina, welcome. Sherry says, wow. Suzanne says, no doubt. Dorothy, maybe she's a friend of his trying to blow smoke on the case. Dorothy, possible, but I never thought of that, Dorothy. I guess that's possible. That's always possible. But I let her know that he should not be used as a source regarding his sister's disappearance. And if you're going to ever do any more any coverage of Esther's disappearance, this reporter should not talk to him anymore. All right, but I did send her a link to that episode so she could judge it for herself. And I did. Once again, you can read the article. I posted it at in the Unfound podcast discussion group if you'd like to read it yourself, and you'll see what I mean. He's quoted extensively. His name is used extensively. And I didn't like it. It reminded me so much of what they did with the Disappeared show did to April Pitzer, interviewing two guys for her disappearance who were two of the main suspects in her disappearance. It's just crazy to me. It's just lazy. It's just completely lazy. Suzanne, poor researching on her report. Totally agree. So that was that article, once again, out of Kokomo, Indiana. So let's go to this week's case. It is the disappearance of Jayme Bowen. The episode is being called The Right Lead. And the reason it's being called The Right Lead is because, you know, to this point, I think that Jamie Bowen's disappearance has been mixed in with the disappearances of and murders of all these women down in Chillicothe, Ohio. And Jamie, you know that Jayme Bowen disappeared in April of 2014 from Columbus, Ohio. Let's just put that on the record. And Chillicothe, Ohio is south of there. You will remember a couple weeks ago that I talked about watching the Gone series that was on Spike TV. It was an 8-episode series about what happened in Chillicothe. Jayme Bowen is talked about in one of those episodes, episode 4. And I have to tell you, after getting to know Nancy, her mother, getting to know Janet, who I mentioned earlier, who is watching tonight. Thank you for joining us, Janet. I think it is a mistake to include Jayme Bowen in those other crimes, even though her disappearance plays out, kind of sounds like what happened to some of these women down in Chillicothe, which once again is not far from Columbus. I think it is a mistake. And I think that this is one of those cases, and the reason that this episode is called The Right Lead is that, you know, anybody can just go out there and get facts and information and everything, but a good detective is able to determine the clues that matter and the clues that don't matter. What is leading me in the positive direction? Which clues don't mean anything? And I think what has happened in this case, and why it's still unsolved over 4 years later, is that my perception is that too many people have wanted to include Jamie's disappearance with all of those other women's disappearances and murders and blame this on a variety of drug dealers whose names are Crail, Preston, Dollar Bill. They get a lot of coverage in the Gone series. If you should get a chance to watch that. If you can, there's places online where you can go to watch it. And I think that has thrown this investigation off. After talking to Nancy and Janet, I am convinced that the wrong leads have been followed. And the right leads, to me, are more focused in Columbus, should be more focused much closer to Jayme the person. Instead of trying to group her in with these other women, you have to look at Jayme the person, see what was going on with her personally, see who she was running into personally, what was going on with her personally, and trying to see connections between her disappearance and all of these other things that happened with these other women. But all of you in the end will have to decide, whether you think that Jayme Bowen's disappearance is connected to the Chillicothe, these like 6 or 7 women who have disappeared. A few of them have been found murdered or dead. Of course, the coroner said that they've been overdoses, but if you watch the series, that 8-part series called Gone, you're going to find out maybe those the coroner's reports are up in the air, might not be correct. But I believe that Jayme Bowen's disappearance is a standalone case. And but you get to listen to the interview on Friday, and you will get to decide for yourself. First, I'll do my summation afterwards. And then for any of you who are Patreon supporters, you know that I do my blog. I do another summation, a much deeper, in-depth summation of each case every week. I've been doing that since I've been on Patreon. For all of these cases, you can sign up for $2 a month to see my more in-depth analysis of each disappearance and what I think happened and why. What you're going to hear about are some couple strange guys who are around Jayme, and you're going to hear about 2, I think, dangerous guys who are around Jayme, and only one of them can even be closely, I think, connected to the Chillicothe women at all. So you're just gonna have to make your decision for yourself. But once again, this Friday, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen, April of 2014. The episode is called "The Right Lead." She disappeared from Columbus, Ohio. I know that there's I think a missing persons day that's coming up in Ohio, I believe. I think. So I may be wrong about that. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. But that is this week's disappearance, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen. If you can, maybe you might want to try to find Gone. Is it on Netflix or I don't know where it is, or online somewhere, and try to at least watch the 4th episode, because that's where Nancy, her mother, is interviewed, and they talk about some of the things that we are going to talk about on Friday's episode. So that'll give you a little pre-studying that can be done before the episode plays. It's a long episode. I haven't done my summation yet, but already it's over 2 hours long. So it's more in depth than anybody has ever done on Jayme's disappearance. And I hope that you will find it interesting. May 19th is Missing Persons. Janet, thank you. Thank you, Janet. May 19th is Ohio's Missing Persons Day. And Janet, what we have to do is before that happens, I have to get you and Nancy Unfound shirts with Jayme's picture on it. So if you're going, you can wear those shirts. That's what I have to do for you. I got 7 days to do that. All right, so I have to take care of that for you. But I think that's all I have for tonight. We're going just to about an hour, but what did we do? Talked about how I played horrible disc golf this weekend. Talked about how Volume 3 is now out. It's Volume 3, Unfound, the First Year Cases, Volume 3. Told you about contacting USF about maybe being a guest lecturer over there in their criminology department. Did the business, volumes 1 and 2 in both print. Got those right here. Patreon and PayPal, the playing cards, the T-shirts. There we go. In the news, no new updates for Lauren Ashley's case. Talked about Jessica Heeringa, how they're picking out a jury right now and how there's no body that's been found, so that might be a little difficult for the prosecutors. We talked about the Kokomo article in which talked about Esther Barger and how they quoted her brother, who, in my opinion, and Esther's daughter's opinion, should be the #1 suspect in her disappearance. And then we finished up with this week's case this Friday, the disappearance of Jayme Bowen in Columbus, Ohio in April 2010. Let me see if I can answer. Is the book a transcript of the cases? Does it have your extra editorial views? It has both, Sherry. The books have both a short facts of the case and then a transcript of the interviews, and then I'd say quite long my opinions on each case as what I call observations afterwards. Yes, Sherry, it has everything. It has everything. So facts, transcripts, and my personal observations are in the books. Yes. But I'm going to leave you now. It's been going about an hour. I thank you all for joining me tonight. I love talking to you. I love seeing all of you in here. You taking some time out of your week for me. Of course, I know with the program, you can listen to it anywhere in your car, in bed, or whatever. But here, you actually have to kind of sit in front of your computer or your phone. That you do that, I deeply appreciate it. And you will hear me Friday for the disappearance of Jamie Bowen, an episode I'm calling The Right Lead. Good night, everyone. Please stay safe. Watch yourself out there. And thank you. Good night.